Hello, and welcome back to the Metuchen High School Media Club's podcast. I'm Sydney Gordesky, and today I sit down with Rhea Wolfram. Here's a little bit about Rhea before we begin. Rhea Wolfram grew up in Newport News, Virginia, where she graduated second in her class from high school and then went on to William and Mary College. She has lived a remarkable life where she has witnessed so much history and really learned so many lessons. And in the interview, I believe that she shares the lessons and the stories from that history that she has witnessed. Rhea has also just celebrated a very, very big birthday that she will tell you about. And she's just a remarkable person to learn from. So I hope you enjoy this interview.
I am Rhea Wolfram. I live in Dallas, Texas. I am the matriarch of a 5-generation family scattered all over the world.
That's so beautiful. And you have so many friends and admirers all over the world as well.
I was born in Newport News, Virginia, but I came to Dallas at the end of the war in 1946 and have remained here ever since.
Yes. And Rhea, we heard you just celebrated a birthday. Do you want to tell everyone about your birthday?
Yes. Last week, I was privileged to celebrate my 104th birthday, and I was so happy I was able to do so. Thrilled to be able to share a few minutes with you and to impart to you some of my feelings, especially about history.
Yes. Speaking of which, you mentioned you grew up in Newport News, but just take us through. You were born in Newport News, Virginia, went to school in Newport News, and how was everything through high school?
Well, I had a wonderful career in high school. I was very much involved in many activities. Ended up with National Honor Society, National Thespians, Mu Alpha Theta, editor of the newspaper. I just had a wonderful time. And I was in a high school that was one of the first to take on the reform curricula that had been espoused by John Dewey in the early 30s, which was based on experiential activities rather than lecture and regurgitation. And then I went to the College of William and Mary, where I got a wonderful education. I majored in history, but the important thing about William and Mary is there were very few women, but even more so, there were very few Jews. There was a quota, and I was lucky that I got in on it. But it's also a place where I first experienced anti-Semitism. My roommate was invited to party after party after party when we were freshmen, and we couldn't understand why I was never invited. And she came in one day and she said, "Rhea, sit down, I want to talk to you." And she said to me, "The reason you're not invited is because they don't take Jewish girls." And I was kind of shocked because I'd always known that there was separation among people, but I'd never been rejected because of my faith. But I had a very good college experience. I double majored in education and sociology and graduated cum laude with honors. And then I went back to Newport News, was lucky enough to get a teaching assignment, was a 7th grade with 55 students.
Wow, that's a lot.
And that is where the Dewey philosophy really came into success in my classroom. Now, it's true that being an idealist and wanting to expose my children to everything, I made arrangements to take them on a field trip the Hampton Institute, which was one of the outstanding Negro colleges in the country. The next thing I knew, I was about to be fired. Parents objected to my taking their children to a Negro college and wanted the school to dismiss me. It was a public hearing. I was just 20 years old. This was my first experience in encountering anything outwardly prejudiced. I said, if you're going to fire me, that's fine. But I'm not going to give up taking those children who want to the institution. The school board backed down, accepted me for another 3 years. That day, only 5 children out of a class of 55 did not go on the excursion. It was a real learning lesson for the students as well as the faculty, as well as the citizens of the community. It had an impact upon me for the rest of my life.
So why were you so determined to take these students to this school?
So they could see the dairy farm that they were operating, which was outstanding.
How did your students feel? Were they opposed to going?
They opposed to have their children go to a Black college.
The job I've always known you for, and my family has always known you for, was your time coaching kids on getting into different colleges and private high schools. Can you reflect on your time doing that?
I wouldn't say I coached them. I was a educational consultant. Okay. What I did was to enable them to use their assets to get into a school that would be successful for them socially as well as academically. But that didn't start in the beginning. That was just happenstance. I was in the bed quite a bit because of a bad back. And many people, my husband's colleagues especially, knew that I knew a lot about Eastern colleges and asked if their children could come over and talk with me. And that's how it all started. Coached them. What I did was to let them see the positive facets of their life. It's not all numbers that get you into college. It's who you are and how you're motivated and what you do about it. And you need to be in an environment where you're going to be successful, not fretful or scared all the time.
Do you think that going to William and Mary, do you think that was we talked about this proper fit. Do you think that was the proper fit for you?
Well, it was a proper fit for me because it's the only thing I could afford. I never thought about, I did turn down a scholarship to Goucher College, which was in Baltimore, Maryland. But frankly, I didn't want to go there because it didn't have a campus. It was in a lot of downtown buildings. This is before it had its brand new campus, which is gorgeous today. It was a women's college, and I wanted co-ed. And I got a scholarship to William and Mary, and that's why I went there. Forget this, I went to college in the depth of the Depression. As a matter of fact, almost no one of my peers went to a public institution like William and Mary. They went to Teachers College, but I did not want to go to Teachers College. I wanted a liberal arts education, and I got one, and I got a very good one. I also, while I was teaching school, I was an air raid warden, and I sit on the roof one night a week with my bucket of sand and water, and that was quite an experience. Don't forget, I lived in an area where the lights were turned down at 7 o'clock, and you even in the automobiles, half of the front lights were blackened because we were in a very strategic area. We had the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Seabees in that one area.
You really got a front row seat to what was the kind of work that the military did. What kind of did that give you more appreciation for what our armed services do?
Well, absolutely. You can't believe the hardships until you're right there seeing it. What I was asked to do in my job, that when the trains came in, the soldiers got off, they crossed the wharf to the ship, and it was quite an emotional experience to see people you knew and not be able to even speak to them as they were embarking onto the ship. Unusual experience for a woman, but I had passed and was accepted by secret documents, and I was the only woman working in the office with the officers.
It seems throughout your whole life, whether it's been information that you've acquired through literature or different jobs that you've had, you've always had this passion and this drive to, I should say, information has always come to you. You are, and even still to this day, you are such a sharp person with a brilliant mind that is just running on all kinds of information. Can you speak to the importance of information and reading?
I don't think I have a brilliant mind. I was endowed with high energy level and insatiable curiosity, and I always wanted to learn. Even when we moved to Dallas, I took courses constantly at SMU or the University of North Texas. I also, after graduating, did graduate work at the University of Michigan and at Harvard and the University of North Texas. I've been a lifelong learner.
How do you keep that? Because it seems like the curiosity is what drives your learning. How do you keep yourself curious? How do you keep yourself interested?
Well, I read the newspaper, listen to the news. I go to concerts. I go to museums. I go to theater. I just am curious. And if there's a parade, when I was a kid, my father always made sure that we were right there to see the parade rather than to hear about it. I was taught to to learn actively rather than through the lenses and the opinions of other people.
As I was reading, different stories that have been written about you, as well as some other interviews that you've done, I've noticed that your life, and this kind of goes back to the curiosity, but your life has really, you've intertwined with a lot of influential people. And one thing that I thought was very interesting was you were in Dallas on the day of the Kennedy assassination.
Oh my God. That was a day that I will never forget. I had been invited to a luncheon by a very good patient of my husband's. And I also had the opportunity to go to the Kennedy luncheon, but I went to my friend's luncheon. I saw the president and his wife on Lemon Avenue as they were en route downtown. They went west and I went east to the country club where the luncheon was being held. And it was there that we heard that Kennedy was shot. We were paralyzed. This is before lunch even started. It was a Thursday. I knew that my husband was at Grand Rounds at Parkland Hospital, which was part of the medical school. So I called him on the telephone and he said to me, "Don't say anything to anybody. It has not been announced officially, but he came in DOA, meaning dead on arrival." And of course, I just burst into tears. I stayed at the telephone, wiped my tears, and told my hostess that I had to leave. And I left immediately. And as soon as the others heard the news, when it was announced officially, everybody left. I went immediately, as did others, to school to pick up my boys. And I did. And when we got home, we turned on the television and turned on our phonograph to record everything that was being said. And for 3 days and nights, we have the reels of what took place on the radio. And I'll never forget that day as long as I live. Everybody canceled any party that they'd been invited to. As a matter of fact, the city was in mourning for almost a year. People were just not in the mood to even be with one another. And other people outside of the state of Texas, many would not even come to Dallas because of this terrible tragedy that took place. It's hard to describe. That none of us really knew Kennedy personally, but we felt as if we knew him and we had lost a member of our family.
Do you think that there's been any historical event since then equivalent to the pain that the city of Dallas and the nation went through at that time?
Going back, Sydney, to my past, as you mentioned, I guess I should say that I've always been a giver. And it's been very difficult for me the past few years when I have been limited physically because of a broken hip to be a receiver. It's very difficult for me. But I had a blind brother. He was born blind, my older brother. And I can remember from the time I was maybe 3 years old that I had to lead him around, help dress him, help feed him. And he went with me everywhere until I went off to college. Education is not limited to the books that you have in elementary school and high school and college. The life experiences are what have sustained me during my later years. My knowledge of American history, believe it or not, had a lot to do with my awareness and knowledge of the educational programs in this country.
Do you think that education has worked in shaping America and making us the nation that we are? Do you say that a lack of education in certain areas has resulted in some of the issues we see today?
I don't think that we have supported education the way we should have. Moral compass is gone. People don't have respect for one another. And I don't think they put education as a high priority. I think that's turning around because with high technology, it's imperative that people be educated. I've seen a trend, more people graduating from high school. We are making progress, however, in helping children who have special needs, and I'm thrilled about that. We have other issues that I think are rather difficult. There's more isolation. There's more separation from the haves and the have-nots.
You said about separation really resonated with me. And not necessarily, I guess politics is what comes to mind at first, but just any dispute or disagreement that people might have. How do you think that the sort of separation crisis where people aren't, if you want to call it that, where people aren't speaking to each other as much and things are more behind a screen. How do you think that that has added to this issue of just the sort of inhumane rhetoric that we see?
Well, I think that we're more polarized and we've lost the middle. And what we've got to do is to learn how to listen. We've lost that ability. We've lost our respect in many ways for the opinions of people that don't agree with you. I'm concerned about political leadership. I don't think we have access to enough people who are interested in going into politics who could be good leaders in this country. But that too will pass. If you learn history, you'll know that there have been many times, there have been many crises in America, very bad times, but we've come through it. What has bothered me is that I think people thought more about themselves than they have about their country. I don't see the patriotism demonstrated with strength the way I did when I was a kid. A lot of people just don't want to be involved. It's important that you be involved. You're a citizen. You need to vote any way you feel, but you need to vote and get the information for yourself and use it and be active. I do think that we will swing back. I think we're at the bottom of a very negative period, but we've been there before and we've made it back and we've learned from it, and it will happen. Not in my lifetime, maybe in yours, but it will come back.
It seems a storyline that I'm getting through this whole conversation that we've had is that keeping yourself educated and keeping yourself involved. And I think this was more of a physics thing, but people have taken it and applied it to their lives as well. I think it was Einstein who said, like, objects in motion stay in motion. So people who are doing things stay doing things. And I would say you are for sure a prime example of that. You've stayed active and involved physically and mentally your whole entire life, and you continue to today. What would you say is the biggest way that you've kept your mind sharp for 104 years?
Be involved, be connected with people, be connected with your community.
You talk about the family that you came from, one of 4 children, and you mentioned in the beginning of this interview that you're the matriarch of a 5 generation family. And as someone who knows you, I can also attest to the fact that you have many people who maybe are not related by blood, but certainly consider you a large part of their life. What is one thing you would want to say to this next generation of people?
Live, be involved, don't sit back, even when you don't feel well. Be involved.
She is just amazing. Thank you so much, Rhea, for sitting down with me. You were an absolute treat to interview, and I loved our time together. And thank you for listening. Bye now.